back. And what a great first session. Appreciated, this idea that God has something in front of us. And I think sometimes we're creatures of habits, and so we want things to look like the way they looked before. But so many times God says, "No, I'm going to do a new thing. I'm going to do a new thing." And oftentimes, the new thing that He wants to do in our life comes through a trial or comes through a difficult situation. There's something in our life, like Sam said, and we want to turn and be like, "Man, God, where are you at?" And God wants to say, "I'm right here. I'm in it with you. I'm doing something new. I'm making something beautiful in your life." We're going to sing a new song tonight. Is that okay? I'll have you guys stand up. This song is really just this confession that, you know what? Through tragedy, through trial, through difficult situations, I have a God that's creating something new. We can't try to shove new wine into old wineskins because it doesn't work. And so we're going to sing this song, and I just want you to embrace it like you've sung it 1,000 times. So let's just worship together. Encourage you at some point just to put your hand up and just say, "God, I'm here 100% for you." God, I want you to do something new in my life. In the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender. You are breaking new ground. So I yield to you and to your careful hand. When I trust you, I don't need to understand. Make me a vessel. Make me an offering. Make me whatever you want me to be. God, I came here with nothing but all that you have given me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me. In the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender. You are breaking new ground. You are breaking new ground. Make me a vessel. Make me an offering. Make me whatever you want God, I came here with nothing but all that you have given me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me. Sing, make me a vessel. Sing, make me a vessel. Make me an offering. Make me whatever you want me to be. I came here with nothing, all that you have given me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me. Jesus, bring new wine out of me. Table is a feast, every heartbeat is an altar. Every step a mystery, I am walking with the author. So I fix my eyes upon you. I fix my eyes upon you. I fix my eyes upon you. I fix my eyes. All praise, all praise. Heaven bent to meet us, Father, Son, and Spirit. All praise, all praise. God and man together, one with us forevermore. So in famine we will feast, in drought we'll see a downpour. So let all our fighting cease, the Prince of Peace has conquered. So I fix my eyes upon
are in every moment.
You are my greatest miracle. Why should my heart grow weary? Don't be so downcast, oh my soul. You are in every moment. You are my greatest miracle. Why should my heart grow weary? Don't be so downcast, oh my soul. You are in every moment. You are my greatest miracle. Yes, you are. Sing all praise, all praise. Heaven's meant to meet us, Father, Son, and Spirit. All praise, all praise. God and man together, one with us forever. All praise, all praise. Heaven's meant to meet us, Father, Son, and Spirit. All praise, all praise. God and man together, one with us forevermore. Just need to receive this evening. Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon. Be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And amen, amen, amen. And amen, amen, amen. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon. Be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And amen, amen, amen. And amen, amen, amen. Sing it out. And amen, amen,
favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you. He is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you. 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 Amen. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you. He is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you. 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 Sing amen. Sing
You guys can have a seat.
Job, right?
There you are. You're on. I was going to
I
say,
was-
you weren't turned
okay.
on. There you go.
Welcome back, live stream as well. Welcome back, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of live stream,
Why don't you make an announcement?
yeah, I wanted to
about that?
confirm my grandma did get online. I talked to her in the intermission. She is watching. I think we would consider ourselves not only hosts, but kind of like remote viewing technical support at this point, right?
Yes.
You had the same problem.
Yeah,
right?
so during the intermission, what you don't know, I'm going to embarrass her, is that, by the way, if you're at home and, well, if they didn't figure it out, they're not watching this right now.
Right,
but
they can't hear
You have to
this.
switch on your YouTube channel to the next session.
Yes.
So we have them by different sessions. Otherwise, it rolls to like one of our Sunday services
From Christmas.
online from Christmas. Because Drew and I were watching back there, and we're like, we see Christmas trees on the stage.
Yeah.
But anyway, I spent the full 10 minutes with my mom as technical support and got her over to the new session. So, Mom, welcome back. All right, so we're here. So what else we got?
So we're about to start session 2. So we're going to have Jay Vanderbur come out.
Yep.
He's going to talk. Jay is the lead minister at Waynesburg Christian Church down in southern Indiana. He's actually also a big part of Hope too. He went on a mission in 2017. I know their church has been partnered with us in that mission. It's something close to his heart. I know he's excited to be here. And actually, you know Jay a little bit better than I do, don't you?
I do. So I'll tell you just a little more about Jay and some connection point that I have. Jay is the lead minister now at Waynesburg Christian Church in southern Indiana, as Drew said. But that is actually my home church. That's where I was introduced to Jesus. That's where I grew up. And when I go home, that's where I go. And I get the privilege of sharing once a year on stage with Jay about Hope 2. And for everybody online from Waynesburg, want to welcome you. We're very thrilled to have Jay with us today. Jay is married to Sarah, and he has 4 kids. Backstage, we were laughing because I kept wanting to say Jay has 4 wives and 1 kid. That's not true. It's the other way around. Jay is one of the more humble people I've ever been around in my life. And I got to know Jay really well, actually not in Indiana, but in Liberia. And we were able to room near each other, bunk near each other in Liberia, and I got to just kind of see his heart. And he had been an associate minister for a while at Waynesburg and became the lead minister there. And I can tell you that it's a blessing for them to have him full time. But it's a blessing for us right now. And Jay's going to be talking about looking out. And I don't want to take anything else from his message, but I do want to let you know that before he speaks, we're going to watch a video. And this video is another movie clip remade by our own Harvest movie actors. And this one gets pretty scary. So if you're 18 or under, be careful. This is, parents, be careful. But we're going to look forward to Jay Vanderbur right after this message.
Bro, you got me?
I got you.
All right, help me up, man. Help me up. Whoa. Hang on. I'm flying! I'm flying!
Iceberg!
Iceberg?
Straight ahead!
We gotta tell Autumn!
Okay.
Let's go! Captain! Iceberg! Iceberg! Ooh, ooh, ooh. I can't breathe.
What's going on?
There's an iceberg ahead.
Look out!
Well, how do you follow that, right? Golly. Hey, I want to bring Randy Tempest back out here. So Randy, come on back out, brother.
All right.
It's Randy mentioned that he grew up going to Waynesburg, that Waynesburg is his home church, and I have a gift for you tonight. I went back and looked at a directory. I think it's about circa 1985. And let's check out Brother Randy, mid-'80s.
Wow.
So
Thanks, Jay.
just come. Yeah. You are welcome. You're welcome.
Wow.
Couple quick questions.
Okay. Yep.
Did your mom give you that haircut?
My mom did give me that haircut. Who else would
Okay.
have? Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Only a mom could love a kid like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you just, if you know Miss Janice, she is like the nicest, sweetest, has the kindest heart. Can you just hear Miss Janice right now saying, Randy, dinner's ready. And Randy's like, Mom, I'm playing Space Invaders. Leave me alone. Well, one more question before you go.
Oh, man, this is great.
Did your hair, is that the haircut you had when you met Lori?
You know, it would have been, but right before senior pictures, a girl that went to our church, that's a little older than me, she literally came to my house, because I looked like that as a junior, going into my senior year, and she said, you need to change your hair before a picture. So that's what we did. So otherwise, I'd still be that today.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks, brother.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have nothing else to say, really. That's so much fun. Well, thanks so much for having me. I want to tell you a little story as we get started. One day after church, we drove into town, if that tells you what you need to know about Waynesburg Christian Church. We're surrounded by cornfields. But after church one day, we drove into town, and we were going to eat lunch at my parents' house, and they wanted us to stop at Kentucky Fried Chicken to get some chicken before we went to their house. So we pull up into the Kentucky Fried Chicken, and as we're pulling up to the drive-through to go ahead and place our order, I see two employees outside taking a smoke break. So first red flag right there, right? And then in front of me was this old car. It was probably a mid-'70s old Oldsmobile, just a big honking car. And in front of me, the car had pulled up, and they were at the drive-through speaker. And they sat at the speaker probably 20 or 30 seconds and may have gone on for a minute and just nothing. So the car in front of me starts laying on their horn, just wah, wah, and it sounds like it does sound like, the Titanic horn. It started laying on the horn. Well, they lay on the horn for about 20 seconds, and now my kids are really intrigued by what's happening right here in front of us. And so the car didn't get any response, so they aggressively hit the gas and whip it around the corner and stop at the window. Again, lay on the horn, wah, 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 and, no response. So then they aggressively, again, hit the gas, and there's some parking places off to the left. So picture they're aggressively driving. They have to do the little turn to the right to whip it into the parking space in the left. So they pull forward, they make the little bank right, and then whip it into the parking spot. And I just follow them, and I park too, because they're not going to respond to me either. And by now my kids are getting hungry, but they're really intrigued about what's about ready to happen. And out from this car steps this little petite old lady who's got her church clothes on, and she looks over at me like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, I've been to church. I'm going to get me some chicken today. If I have to go in there and get it myself, I'm going to get me some chicken. So I followed her in, and she ended up getting her chicken that day. But she was desperate for chicken, right? To go to those lengths. She was desperate for chicken. Well, the reality is that we are surrounded by desperate people all the time. And we're not desperate for chicken, but we can be desperate for all sorts of things. We can be desperate for God. We can be desperate for His move. We can be desperate for meaning and purpose and value in our life. We are surrounded by people who are desperate. And you may have come here tonight feeling rather desperate yourself. Well, today's message is look out. And in Matthew chapter 9, Jesus looked out onto the world and he saw desperation. Let's look and see the next slide here. In Matthew 9, verses 35 through 38, let's look at this slide together. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to the disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." See, that word compassion is a very strong word. It comes from the root word, which is a Greek word called splagnon. And splagnon in the Greek means intestines or inward parts. You find that word splagnon in Acts 1:18 when Judas commits suicide and his body falls. It says that his intestines burst out, his splagnon burst out. And so this word in Matthew 9 for compassion comes from that root word splagnon, and that word is splagnizomai. And it means that Jesus looked on the crowds and he had compassion on them, and that he was moved on the very deepest depths of his being when he saw the crowds. Can you imagine that? The point of this isn't to give you a nice, neat little tidbit about this Greek word. The point of this is that when we look out, Jesus calls us to have the same compassion that he has. If we're the workers in his harvest field, he calls us to have the same compassion that he has. And so I am challenged by that, because when Jesus looked at the crowds, he was sick to his stomach over what he saw. And I'm greatly, greatly challenged by this passage, because when I look out, I don't always have the same compassion that Jesus has. So when Jesus looks out, he has compassion. And as we read through the Gospels, we see that Jesus, time and time again, brings grace and truth to people. He brings grace and truth to bear on the lives of people that he encounters. And today we get to see his compassion in action as we look at Mark chapter 5. So if you've got a Bible, you can turn to Mark chapter 5. That's where we're going to be spending the rest of our time here today. But in Mark chapter 5, Jesus gives us an example of his compassion. In Mark chapter 5, Jesus meets two people who are desperate for the move of God in their life. So let's start by reading in Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 21. Earlier in Mark chapter 5, Jesus heals a demon-possessed man, and the people there say, okay, this Jesus thing, this healing is really freaking us out, so you need to leave. So early in the chapter, a crowd of people ask Jesus to leave, and so he leaves. And when this passage picks up in verse 21, there's a new crowd of people there, but they're really excited to see Jesus. Starting in verse 21, when he had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue rulers named Jairus came there. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." Verse 24, so Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. So picture paparazzi, picture just this crush of people. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Tonight we're going to see 3 ways that the compassion of Jesus moves on the lives of these people. And tonight we're just going to walk away with 3 things that we can say to people that we come across, that we want to show compassion to, that may be harassed and helpless, that may be desperate. 3 things that we can say to them. The first thing we can say is this: take your pain to Jesus. Take your pain to Jesus. Here in these first few verses, we meet 2 very, very different people. The first person that we meet is Jairus. Jairus is wealthy. He doesn't need healing, but he comes on behalf of another who does. His child is very, very sick. And her 12 years of life is abruptly shattered, as we read about in verse 42. Jairus risked his position because it says that he was a ruler in the synagogue. Now, it is hard for us to picture, it's hard for us to wrap our minds around how crucial the synagogue was in Jewish life in these days. It was the center of education. It was the center of social life. It was the center of their spiritual lives. And going to Jesus, Jairus risked his standing in the synagogue. We see in the book of John where Jesus heals a blind man, and they kick the blind man and threaten to kick his family out of the synagogue. And that is just such a huge thing to miss out on and not be a part of. So Jairus risked his position to go to Jesus, but he is desperate for Jesus to help. Look at the last phrase in verse 22, first phrase of verse 23. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and he pleaded, Jesus, come with me. My daughter is sick. You see, Jairus understood that no matter the risk, it was worth taking his pain to Jesus. The next person is an unnamed woman. If you go to the next slide there. She is poor. It says that she spent all of her money seeking medical care, and instead of getting better, she only got worse. She herself needs healing. She's had 12 years of misery with this condition that she faces. And by going to Jesus, she risks even more ridicule. And she is desperate for Jesus to help. She thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. You see, Jairus and this unnamed woman have their own pain that they take to Jesus, and is not very different from what we face today, or what people in your life may be facing today. A loved one may not be well. Something completely beyond your control has shattered your life and has taken control out of your hands. You may be dealing with an accident, an illness, isolation, fear, anxiety, name whatever it is. But maybe you look in the mirror and you feel it. Maybe you look around and you see it in others. But there is pain all around us. And Jesus says, you can bring your pain to me. And as he speaks to their hurts, as we're going to see, he doesn't necessarily follow the plan that they have in mind. So the first thing that we see is that we can take our pain to Jesus. The second thing we see, well, let's just keep reading. Pick it up again in verse 28. The woman says, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Well, she touched him, and immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? You see the people crowding against you, his disciples answered, and yet you can ask, who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. Now, there's probably a little side note there, an important thing about coming to Jesus and being fully honest. That says that she told him the whole truth, and he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. While Jesus was still speaking, some men came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? Ignoring what they said, Jesus told the synagogue ruler, don't be afraid, just believe. Well, the first thing that we learn through this passage is that we can take our pain to Jesus. The second thing we learn is that we can trust Jesus, trust your itinerary to Jesus. An itinerary is a planned route or journey. And the woman's itinerary was just to slip in, get next to Jesus, touch him, and just slip away anonymously. But Jesus shatters that itinerary, doesn't he? There's all these people that are crushed around him, and as soon as she touches him, he feels power, and I can't explain how this works. You can ask Jesus when you get to heaven one day. But Jesus feels power leave his body and says, whoa, who touched me? Something just happened. I need to know who touched me. And instead of this woman being able to slip off anonymously, Jesus is bound and determined to know who touched him. Now, what's important for us to understand is that this lady isn't just facing a medical issue. This condition that she has is also causing, it's a cultural issue, it's a social issue for her. Because according to Jewish law and according to Jewish custom, because of her bleeding, she was considered, quote unquote, unclean. And if she was unclean, then that meant that anything she sat on was unclean. Anyone that she touched was unclean. So she would have been, we don't know anything about her. We don't know if she was married. We don't know if she had kids. We don't know how old she was or how young she was. But we do know that her condition cut her off and isolated her from everyone. This is not the time and place to do it, but if you want to look in Leviticus 15 and see some of those rules that went along with ceremonial cleanings, you can do that at a different time. But this lady was cut off from family, from friends, from community, from worship. Those would have known her and known her ailment would have avoided her. Try to imagine what life has to be like for her. Just pause for a minute. Try to imagine what life has to be like for her. She's poor. She spent all her money on this medical stuff, and it's not better, it's worse. No one can touch her without being unclean. So people, I'm sure, avoid her. As you can imagine, like in our day, some people might respond to her with compassion, but I'm sure there's other people that would respond to her with ridicule. They would have all sorts of names that they might call her. Some would even believe that whatever she had going on, she probably did something to deserve it. So she thinks, if only I can touch Jesus, if only I can get close enough to touch him, maybe, this will be the answer that I've been looking for. And when she touches him, Jesus stops. Think about life for this woman. Have you ever gone to a ball game like up at Lucas Oil Stadium, or gone to watch a Pacers game or something? There are people oftentimes as you're maybe walking through the stadium that are begging for money, that are asking for a handout, and sometimes you get this really uncomfortable feeling. Sometimes you're like, okay, kids, just keep walking, don't make eye contact. We're not, that's what it must have been like for this lady. People avoid her on purpose. She has to declare that she is unclean. And so people are constantly avoiding her and passing by her, and yet Jesus stops for her. There's a picture of the gospel here, right? The uncleaner made clean. Compassion is here. Acknowledgement is here. God's grace is here. Jesus stops for her. And as we look out in our lives, there's, I think, a word for us here in our itineraries too. And it's this question: who do I need to stop for? Who do I need to stop for? As I look out into my life, as I look out into my week that is coming up, how many people will I pass by every single day? How many people will I pass by every single week that need some hope, that need some encouragement, that need to know that I care about them? Who do I need to stop for? Well, Jairus also has an itinerary, right? Jesus stops for the woman, but Jesus goes with Jairus. It tells us in verse 24, hey, they're heading to his house. Jesus is going with them. And Jairus has an agenda. Jairus has got an itinerary. That itinerary is, get Jesus to my daughter as fast as I can, right? Jesus is like the ambulance. My daughter is the patient. I need to get the ambulance to my patient as soon as possible. She is not well. She's dying. Jesus, please hurry. Jesus, please hurry. We've got to get there. And yet, the lady touches Jesus and he stops. If you're in Jairus' shoes, what are you thinking? Let's go, bro. This lady's been suffering for 12 years. Surely she can wait a few more hours, right? This lady, I know this lady. I've seen this lady. She's been like this forever. Can't you just come back a little later? My daughter, Jesus, don't forget her. Why? Why are we stopping? Well, it's easy for us to question Jesus' itinerary, isn't it? Have you ever questioned God's timing in your life? I know I have. Why is this taking so long? Why is there a human traffic jam? Why? Well, I can remember going down to Florida. It's been several years ago now. I was down there to go to a conference, and I can remember I was staying in a hotel, and I was on the 18th floor of that hotel. And one afternoon, we had a little bit of a break, and I was just outside looking out the window, and there was another hotel across the street. And I saw these fire trucks coming down the road, and two or three of them pulled into in front of that hotel, and the firemen started getting out. They started running into the building. Well, them going in front of the hotel caused this big traffic jam, and so cars just started piling up down the street. So I'm watching, and like down this aisle are the fire trucks, and down this way are all these cars. And after 2 or 3 minutes, people just start laying on their horns. They're getting impatient. And they don't see what I see, right? They don't have the perspective that I have. There's a traffic jam, not because somebody's just like not paying attention to the light turning green. There's a traffic jam because there are firemen running into this hotel, and there's a little bit of smoke coming out. It didn't end up being a big deal. But in that very moment, I don't know who is in that road. Maybe there are people blaring on their horn that had friends or relatives staying in the hotel. I don't really know, but I had the perspective from up above that those people on the road level didn't have. And when I get frustrated with God's itinerary, when I get frustrated with God's timing, when I get frustrated that things aren't going how I think they should go, I'm just like that person honking on my horn, and God's up in heaven saying, bro, you don't see what I see. You don't know what I know. And so Jesus takes Jairus' itinerary and throws it out the window. We're just going to take a little break here, and we're going to deal with this woman. And there's another question for us about an itinerary, and it is this. Who do I need to walk with? Who do I need to walk with? Jesus goes on, and he does go with Jairus, and he does see his daughter, and he does heal her. You can read about that a little bit later. But Jesus walks with him. And the simple question is, who do I need to walk with? There's some people we need to stop for and just take a minute, but there's other people that we need to walk with. There are other people that need to know that God hasn't given up on you, and I haven't given up on you either, and I'm going to walk with you no matter how long it takes. And so, Mark chapter 5 teaches us we can take our pain to Jesus. It teaches us that we can trust our itinerary to Jesus. And the last thing it teaches us is this: we can treasure the words of Jesus. We can treasure the words of Jesus. Have you ever been marked by somebody's words? Maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a coach, maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a sibling or another relative. But have you ever been marked by somebody's words? Where someone said something to you that you have never, ever forgotten. Most of us forget the praise that we get, the encouragement that we get. Most of us hang on to those things that wound us and hurt us. But what's important here is that Jesus wants to mark Jairus. Jesus wants to mark this unnamed woman with his words. He's not just going after their healing. He's going after their heart. Look again at the next slide here on Mark 5:32 through 34. Jesus kept looking around to see who had touched him. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." You know, this is the only passage in all of the Gospels where Jesus addresses someone as daughter. Think of all the other names that this lady had been called. Think of all the other words that had been spoken to her. You know, she's got to be wondering, oh gosh, Jesus is calling me on the carpet. I've made him unclean. I've made all these people that are around me unclean. Is Jesus upset with me? Is Jesus mad at me? Is this going to be bad that he's calling me out in front of all these people? But Jesus doesn't call her what everybody else has called her. Jesus addresses her as daughter. Feel the power in that? She had been called many things, but Jesus calls her daughter. It's a title that invites her into his family. It's a title that gives her dignity, something that she probably hasn't had for the last 12 years. He didn't want to just heal her body. He wanted to mark her soul forever with his words. He wanted to stop and call her out. He wanted to look her in the face, he wanted her to see the tenderness in his eyes, wanted her to hear his voice say, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Now go and be freed from your suffering. You're worth my time. You're worth my healing. You're worth my love. Be restored to health. Be restored to this community. Be restored to hope." See, the voices that we give power to in our lives are really important. And Jesus wanted her to treasure the words that he said to her. Imagine how many times she replayed that conversation in her head. Imagine how many times she replayed those words in her head. Down at Waynesburg, we live about 15 to 20 minutes away from Columbus, Indiana. And in Columbus, there's a facility called the Columbus Behavioral Center. It's a place where kids go. It's an inpatient place for kids to come and do school and just fight the battles that they fight. Some of them have been abused. Some of them have been neglected. Some of them have been through terrible, terrible, terrible trauma. And they go there to try to get some help and unpack all the junk that they've been through. And before all this COVID stuff hit, I was able to go there about once a month, and it's just a beautiful thing to get to sit with some of those kids, and they don't care a thing about who I am. They don't care a thing about what I do. They just want to know that I care about them. And I bring them pizza too, so that's a lot of fun. But I just imagine the words that have marked those kids. I imagine the words that have been said to them, that have marked them, that have brought them to that place. And for just once a month, for about 30 minutes a month, I get to go in and I get to open the Bible and I get to tell them, Jesus has something else to tell you. Jesus says something else about you. Jesus has a new name for you. Jesus has a different identity than the one that you have had put on you. So treasure these words of Jesus. Let them go deep down into your heart and never, ever forget them. Jesus didn't want to just mark this woman, but she also wanted to mark Jairus too. Again, let's look starting in verse 35. While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader, and said, "Your daughter is dead." They said, "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." Don't be afraid, just believe. Jairus had to be devastated at these words, right? All these people were in the way. All these people were blocking Jesus' way, and now you're coming and saying, my daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Jesus doesn't have time for you. You've got to wonder what's going through his head about all these people, about the woman, about this rabbi, Jesus. And the unspoken question that Jairus has is it too late? And some of you may have walked in here tonight asking that question. Is it too late? Is it too late for this relationship? Is it too late for a career change? Is it too late to help my son or daughter that is struggling? Is it too late for Jesus to make a difference in my life or the life of someone that I love? And that was the unspoken question that Jairus had. But Jesus answers that question by saying, don't be afraid, just believe. And that word believe has the tense that says continuous. So it's don't be afraid, just believe and keep on believing. This is incredible to me because look again at what Jesus does here. He wants Jairus to pay attention to what just happened. Hey, ignore what they said. Ignore the voices that just said, hey, just leave the teacher alone. Jairus, don't you see what I just did? Don't you see that I just healed this woman? And Jairus, if I can heal this woman, there's hope for you. There's hope for your daughter. Don't be afraid. Just believe. And what Jesus does is incredible. Instead of the woman's healing, which was a burden to Jairus, right? That was the very thing that prevented Jesus from getting to his daughter sooner. Instead of this woman's healing being a burden, Jesus flips it upside down and turns it into a blessing. Says, Jairus, this healing wasn't just for her sake, it was for your sake too. You want your daughter to be healed? I just healed this woman. Now, let's go. Let's get on going. Let's go see this daughter of yours because I want you to not be afraid. I want you to keep believing. I know you're worried about your story, Jairus, but I need you to pay attention to her story too. Because it's not the burden you think it is, it's a blessing. And the reality for us is this, sometimes the very thing that we need Jesus to do is point us to somebody else's story. Sometimes the very thing we need Jesus to do is to point us to somebody else's story because that story gives us hope. That story gives us encouragement to keep moving forward. There may be somebody's story from right here in this fellowship that gives you hope tonight. There may be stories from Liberia that challenge you to keep moving forward with faith. What story is Jesus trying to point you to? It's easy for us to be cynical, right? It's easy for us to listen to all the other voices that are out there. But Jesus pleads with us in desperate moments with these words, don't be afraid. Keep on believing. Since Christmas at our church, we've got a little girl named Riley. She's 3 years old. She has a cancer tumor on her brainstem. So you add Riley to your prayer list, okay? There's no cure. They're trying some radiation treatments in a couple of weeks. Those treatments win. They'll do another scan, and we're praying for a miracle. Like a week after we found out about Riley's diagnosis, there's another lady in our church. Her name is Barb. Barb's I think she's in her 50s. I'm not going to ask her. She's a grandmother. Seemed as healthy as could be. Around Christmas time, she found out she has a very aggressive form of breast cancer. They said no point doing surgery, no point doing radiation. Let's just do chemo. There's no cure, but maybe chemo will slow it down. So you pray for Barb too. But this story from Mark chapter 5 challenges me. I don't know if there's going to be a nice pretty bow tied to the end of Riley's story. I don't know if there's going to be a nice pretty bow tied to Barb's story. But I do know this. Jesus' words to us can be treasures. And Jesus' word to us can still be every day, hey, don't be afraid. Keep on believing. There will be voices of doubt that will cry out to you to walk away from Jesus, to walk away from faith, to throw in the towel. Jesus says, don't be afraid, keep on believing. There'll be voices that whisper in your ear, hey, Jesus doesn't have time for you. Jesus doesn't care. But Jesus' word to us is this, don't be afraid, keep on believing. There'll be a voice that says, it's too late, it's too late, it's too late. But Jesus says, don't be afraid, keep on believing. There are desperate people out there. There may be desperate people sitting right by you right now in your pew. And they need to hear, don't be afraid. Keep on believing. The compassion of Jesus challenges us to tell people to take their pain to Jesus, to trust their itinerary to Jesus, and to treasure up these words that Jesus has for us. Thank you.
You know what I was thinking while Jay was preaching? Sam, don't look back. Great way to open. That message was perfectly on topic. Great way to close tonight. Jay would have had no way of knowing that, even the plans that we had made 2 weeks ago, those changed. The plans that we had at the beginning of the week, those changed. We really had to trust Jesus with the itinerary of this conference, and we hope that you all will treasure the words that are spoken here. That was a great message.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this whole looking out, and I loved what Jay said, or really what the challenge from Jesus is. Who are you looking for? Who do you need to stop and look for? Who do you need to walk beside? And then at the end he said that sometimes we need to look at somebody else's story, and it's going to speak to us. And in the beginning, you might have missed it because it happened right in the beginning of our conference tonight. But we played a voice up on the screen, and we put the words up there. And you heard someone share kind of their heart and what they want to be. And I think it's kind of cool because we're now going to look at that again, but this time we're going to look at it on the video. You're going to get to see, and this is actually one of the blind orphans over in Liberia. And Sam had asked him this question, and he answered back with a really profound statement, but it's really very simple. And it makes me think that, and we didn't know what Jay was talking about, but as we were listening, it's kind of cool that let's take a look at somebody else's story and listen to them. Who do we need to come alongside and walk with? Who do we need to see? So I want you to watch this video and listen to the words again, but this time you get to actually meet Elijah.
What's your dream for your life? What do you want?
Well, I'm always praying to God. My dream is to be humble. My dream is to recognize God for myself. My dream is to love my fellow man. My dream is to recognize justice and stay away from injustice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dream is, just to be who I am.
I've met Elijah before, and Elijah is just one of many stories that we're getting to walk alongside with. And by the way, you don't need to feel sorry for Elijah. Elijah's got it figured out, right? I think he can feel sorry for some of us. But we're wanting to walk alongside them. We are walking alongside them. And that is our mission this week. And as we said, we'll continue to share a little more. Tomorrow evening, we'll really get to share more. We'll hear from Sam, and he'll talk a little more about what we're doing over there. But really, it's no bigger than what we just saw. That is what we're doing. Whether it's here or at Waynesburg, where Jay's at, or in Liberia, or California, or Jamaica, or wherever it is, we are walking along other people, looking out and saying, okay, God, what do you want us to do? So tomorrow night, what are we doing? What's the schedule?
Be here at 6:30. Doors open at 6 again. If you want to come early and talk. Just like tonight, we're going to have the live stream. Remember, if you're watching it, it'll be broken up into sessions, so you can watch session 4 tomorrow at the beginning, or session 3 tomorrow at the beginning, and then we'll have session 4 for the second half of tomorrow night. Guys, if you want to check it out in the back, there's some information about that mission. There's some stuff out in the hallway for you to check out. Really, we want to thank you for being here. Thank you, people who are watching online or people who watch this in the future, for the support that you have. Make sure if you didn't grab a booklet on your way in, you can grab one on your way out. We'll have some more changes tomorrow for you that we'll be revealing then, so you'll be sure to want to come back and see who's speaking and see what's going on
Yeah,
then.
because nothing's the same. Anything you expect is going to change, right?
Yeah.
So just expect that. Expect that you don't know what to expect. But hey, I'm going to close this in prayer, and then we will let you go. Thank you again for being here tonight. God, thank you for a wonderful evening. Thank you for a chance, God, to just hear from you. Not from us, not from Sam or Jay, but from you. I thank you, God, for the opportunity that we have to gather, or to get together, whether it be here or online, God, and praise you, hear from you, and be challenged by you. God, a lot of people walked in here tonight with so many different ideas and thoughts and agendas and struggles and issues, and we will walk out of here with the same thing and face it again. But God, I pray that people would be encouraged as they leave, as God, they have been challenged tonight not to look back, and God, to look out. Look out at other people, God. When we get our eyes off of ourselves and we serve others, what a blessing it is. God, I want to lift up the people, God, that are hurting, that are sitting here tonight, that have so much on their plates. For all the people, God, that are online, that the same thing, God, life is not easy. And we lift up Riley and Barb from Waynesburg and pray for, God, their lives to be touched by you, God, and whatever any of our stories have in them, God, may we live them out loud and for you. God, thank you for everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. We love you. We thank you. We look forward to a good night's rest and your new mercies tomorrow. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. See you guys tomorrow.